state average. Whitmer's plan to shutter the high school caused an uproar in low-income African-American majority Benton Harbor and among many Democrats across the state, including the 2 African-American members of the State Board of Education. Both sides toned down rhetoric in the past week as officials looked for a way to save the community's high school and still provide some assurances of better academic opportunities for students. No, let me rewrite that paragraph there. Both sides toned down rhetoric in the past week as officials looked for a way to cover their ass with the voters.
You heard it here, folks. That's all it is.
That is
all it is.
Right there it is.
And if there hadn't been a pushback and some media coverage with those people crying down there with their parents going to Benton Harbor, you'd have never heard about it. Without a whimper, that had been closed faster than you can drop a hammer on the pavement.
You know the thing is, Jack, Benton Harbor used to not be that economically bad off.
No, Clark Equipment was there.
Not just Clark Equipment.
There were a lot of factories. Yeah, it was booming.
Who was the big manufacturer in Benton Harbor once upon
Whirlpool.
a time? Bingo, Whirlpool. Whirlpool still has their worldwide headquarters in Benton Harbor.
Yeah.
It's a nice building. I've drove past it a bunch of times.
Yeah.
I know right where it is. It's right by the lake shore.
Yeah. I lived down there.
Right off of 31 or 196, whatever highway you want to call it.
I was a high school teacher at a school 10 miles.
Yeah.
I know how racist St. Joe was as well.
Yeah. We've talked about it on the show. Go back into our archives.
I guess, Darren, the thing that you have to go back and accentuate and just emphasize here is that public schools aren't to be closed. They're to be fixed. They're not given an ultimatum, Gretchen. They're to be fixed. You need to say, we have suffered a lack of funding for too long thanks to the Republican leadership, and we're going to save the schools that have suffered from that lack of funding. Because Benton Harbor is not the only one. You go down to Albion, where they lost their public school 4 years ago. It's a ghost town. And the charter schools, like vultures, sit around these districts and wait for conservative leadership to come in and close the public schools. Then they swoop in. They swoop in. They get to $7,800 per student. They teach no wages to their teachers. It's a business proposition. And the kids get a half-ass education in return for their profit. And that's what they're licking their chops for down there in Benton Harbor right now. And plus, like you said, the developers are saying, man, that's some plush real estate. That window on my condos can look right over the St. Joe River. We're going to make a lot of money. And a 14-year-old black kid's going to end up on a bus somewhere headed to a white school where he's going to feel like a cat on a hot tin roof.
Yeah,
it's indecent.
Yeah, I wonder what 10 districts they're talking about. Stevensville, Sawyer, maybe?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Like you said, Coloma. Coloma's a little bit of a drive.
Yeah, Coloma's directly east of Benton Harbor.
Yeah.
And, of course, St. Joe Stevensville is right across the river.
Yeah.
The river that the racists say, there's a bridge that goes over the river, and they say that's the shortest bridge to Africa.
Yep, they most certainly do.
That's a common phrase down there.
Yep.
I've protested down there and been attacked for being friends with black people in St. Joe.
You most certainly have.
So, Whitmer,
unbelievable.
You want to look like you saved them, you just delayed the pain.
We will be following this story. You
right,
can guarantee it. And one thing before we move on, I want to mention this real quick to you. I just saw a story in a local paper earlier this week in Montcalm County. Carson City Crystal Schools. Did you know their teachers just noticed a few months ago that there were errors on their paychecks? They were having deductions taken out for their pensions. That money was still sitting in the school's general fund. It had not been paid to the pension people. So teachers have thrown a fit. The board has finally moved on this. Some of these errors go back to at least 2017.
Yeah. That reminds me of the error where they found that all the jurors in Grand Rapids courts, the highest percentage of them for decades, guess where they're coming from? Not Grand Rapids proper. They were coming from Rockford. And one guy found out about it. So wait a second. What, you can't do this. And now we're finding out this mathematical mistake was just happened to be siphoned off. And if that hadn't been caught,
it would have went on forever. They said it was an accounting error. It was the accounting department was too far by itself, is what they said in the paper, or something similar to that. Yeah, too far by themselves. You think I really believe that? I don't think so.
If you live in Grand Rapids and you're listening to the show, Google John Helmholt makes admission that GRPS made a mistake. Here's a mistake. It was just uncovered there was a building, a public school in Grand Rapids, where one of the workers put his hand through a wall and he found asbestos.
Yep.
They did a test. The results of that test conclusively showed asbestos in the building, ubiquitously. They gave it to Grand Rapids Public Schools, and guess what? They didn't do anything about it.
They didn't do anything.
For months.
Till it came out in the media.
Yeah, then they did something about it. How is that any different than what's going on in Carson City?
Yeah, exactly. I tell you what, here's some more mistakes that were made. The U.S. Supreme Court made a couple of mistakes on Thursday, and I have first this. This is by NBC News, Pete Williams. The Supreme Court Thursday refused to find that political partisanship was so extreme in drawing the maps for congressional districts in 2 states that it violated the Constitution. The result was a setback for advocates of political reform. In separate votes, the court rejected claims that partisan politics played too great a role in the way congressional districts were designed in North Carolina to the benefit of Republicans and in Maryland to the advantage of Democrats. On a 5-4 vote in the North Carolina case, the justices found that the partisan gerrymandering claims present political questions beyond the reach of the federal courts. That's Chief Justice John Roberts writing his majority opinion. They're saying that asking the courts to intervene in these cases would, quote, be an unprecedented expansion of judicial power, end of quote. Really? Isn't that what the Supreme Court is supposed to do? They're supposed to interpret the law? Aren't they supposed to interpret the Constitution? Why aren't they doing their job? I tell you why. Because they want gerrymandering. Because that's what happens when you get conservatives running the show. We proved it in Michigan. We're proving it now nationally. Sorry, that's the way it is.
That's the same Supreme Court that allows now police to draw blood from unconscious DUI suspects.
That's the second one. I've got that. This is Richard Wolf and Christine Phillips for USA Today. This is, again, out of Washington. A closely divided Supreme Court ruled Thursday that police do not need a warrant before using blood drawn from an unconscious driver to prove he was intoxicated. The court, in a 5-4 decision, ruled that blood can be drawn from an unconscious driver who cannot be given a breath test because such a situation is urgent enough to eliminate the need for a warrant. Here are the judges that dissented: Sonia Sotomayor, Ruth Bader Ginsburg, Elena Kagan, and here's a surprise, Neil Gorsuch.
Yeah, big surprise. Hey, this is what happens to your civil rights when you're more concerned about who's cuter, Beto O'Rourke or Peter Buttigieg. One of these guys combs his hair better than the other. These are the issues that you don't pay any attention to, or at least you don't even see them. Supreme Court allows police to draw blood from DUI suspects without a warrant.
The case involved Wisconsin's Gerald Mitchell, who was under the influence of both drugs and alcohol and was found drunkenly wandering along the shore of Lake Michigan in May 2013. Police took him to a hospital for a blood draw, but by then he was unconscious. Drivers in Wisconsin are presumed to have consented to a blood draw simply by taking the wheel. They can withdraw that consent at the risk of losing their license, but that doesn't apply to unconscious drivers. 28 states have similar implied consent laws. Mitchell was convicted of driving while intoxicated, and state courts upheld the conviction, but the Supreme Court agreed to decide whether implied consent is consistent with the Fourth Amendment's ban against unreasonable searches. On one side were law and order types such as Chief Justice John Roberts and Alito, who saw little wrong with the state's approach. Associate Justice Clarence Thomas sided with the court's conservative wing, writing in a concurring opinion that the Supreme Court has consistently ruled that police officers may perform searches without warrants when destruction of evidence is at risk. Thomas writing, quote, "The rules should be no different in drunk driving cases," end of quote. On the other side were most of the court's liberal justices and Gorsuch, who has taken up the late Justice Antonin Scalia's penchant for protecting criminal defendants' rights. In her dissenting opinion, Sotomayor said the court faced a narrow question. Quote, "What must police do before ordering a blood draw of a person suspected of drunk driving who has become unconscious? Under the Fourth Amendment, the answer is clear. If there is time, get a warrant." End of quote. Mitchell's appeal attracted support from defense lawyers and libertarian groups, while Wisconsin drew the backing of 18 states, Wisconsin municipalities, and Mothers Against Drunk Driving.
The word here is unconscious. And the people who are unconscious that could care less about these rulings, whether it's gerrymandering or it's the blood draw, are also unconscious to the fact that while we're looking at how cute our candidates are and the Democratic horde up on stage, the DNC platform completely repudiated all of the progressive input, including fracking, TPP, the Palestinian invasion by Israel. The progressive insertions into that platform were summarily rejected by old Hillary leftovers and corporate establishment neoliberals. It just recently, common dreams. Those are the things that make a difference, and you never know about them. They're the little deaths by 1,000 cuts. Well, we're worried about, the new arena being built down in Detroit for the Pistons? I don't know.
Yeah. Our priorities are screwed up. Our priorities have been screwed up for decades, Jack. It really is.
Well, we talk about the amnesia, America's amnesia. I guess we can now just say unconsciousness.
Yeah.
Just totally unconscious. You see 2 people dead in the Rio Grande River, a father and a daughter, and you hear of the proliferation of these camps all over the United States. I've seen a map of them. It's like the measles on the continent, these little dots where these kids are now incarcerated. AOC hit it on the head, out of the park, when she said the concentration camps.
They are. They essentially are. And it
Where's the protest? Where are the thousands of people protesting this?
Well, there were 30 that protested in Midland earlier this week about the conditions.
A start. There's to be 30,000 in Lansing.
Yeah, most certainly. And we're wrapping up on time here. There's a couple of stories that you should look at on our official Facebook page. Again, facebook.com/Southpaws Radio Show. And we'll post these stories if they're not already there. There's an article written by Seth Harp at The Intercept. Headline is, I'm a journalist, but I didn't fully realize the terrible power of U.S. border officials until they violated my rights and privacy. You need to read this article. If you read anything else this week, you must read this. This should scare the living hell out of everybody. Another one that should scare the hell out of everybody. Listen to this. This is one that we're going to post. Unfortunately, we don't have time to get to. Holly Yan and Madeline Holcomb writing for CNN. Here's the headline. A pregnant woman shot in the stomach is indicted in her unborn child's death. Want to guess what state that is, folks? It's Alabama.
With a banjo on my knee.
Oh, exactly. Exactly. Unbelievable. And then we've got a great off-the-cuff story that we won't have time for. This is Ewan Palmer writing for Newsweek. German locals purchased the town's entire beer supply ahead of far-right music festival. Quote, we wanted to dry the Nazis out. End of quote. Great stuff.
Yeah, I needed that.
Yep. That's going to wrap things up for this week. I'm Darren Gibson.
I'm Jack Prince.
For our announcer, Kristen Cook, please support independent media and the First Amendment.
The stations that carry Southpaws do not necessarily share the opinions expressed on the show. Southpaws is protected by the First Amendment to the U.S. Constitution and is copyrighted by Big D Entertainment. All rights reserved.